Let's do a thought experiment. Let's say that I figured it all out. That I resolved all the major existential dilemmas. That I understand the nature of existence. Just for a thought experiment. It's just an easier way to get to what I want to talk about. Let's say that all the great existential questions, all the meaning of life stuff, it isn't out of reach because we lack the intellectual capacity or the processes, like the scientific process or the instruments to measure reality. What if it's all just out there to be found by anybody? The caveat being that with each understanding, there is a bitter pill associated. A guardian, if you will. You don't get to have the understanding if you're not capable of integrating this black pill, I guess you'd call it. But if you can metabolize this black pill, it's more of a red pill. That the barrier between you and understanding all of it is a gauntlet of psyche-shattering, bitter pills about the true nature of reality. Let's also say that postmodernism discovered one of these truths. But when I should say, when I say psyche-shattering, becoming less naive about the nature of existence is always going to be traumatic. Each one of these stops along the gauntlet would be the equivalent of discovering that there is no God, you're adopted, and your partner's been cheating on you all at once. That kind of trauma. The biggest problem with postmodernism is that they're not completely wrong. That the truth that they're sniffing around is something that people won't see because to accept it would either destroy you or turn you nihilistic, bitter, resentful, and potentially destructive to those around you or yourself or both. I think the reason that they stumbled across this truth was because they were already bitter and resentful and wanting to tear it all down. So, in a sense, they'd already integrated the bitter pill. Not really integrated it. The damage, you could say the damage has already been done. And the reason it's been so effective, you could say the best lies are the ones mixed with truth. And if you look at the title of the stream, it's Postmodernism, Objective Reality, and Pragmatic Truth. Objective reality is a pragmatic truth. It is not a literal truth. I know it sounds like I'm siding with the postmodernists, but you've got to give the devil its due. That the objective reality is a social construct, but anything that is shared between people is a social construct. Objective reality is a map to what I would refer to as nature or natural reality. As an autistic person, I make this distinction between social reality and natural reality. And I'll define those as natural reality is the system of the physical system of the universe that operates independently of what anybody thinks about it. It cannot be measured and shared with other people in its true state, converting it in such a way that it can be shared with others. The thing that's being shared is a social construct. I'll define social reality as everything that disappears when there's only one person left. So when the postmodern perspective that, to condense it in, I suppose, a not so generous way, is that there is no objective reality. And in their defense, there is no objective perspective. Perspective is something that an individual has. You can't have a perspectiveless perspective. Kind of nonsensical. But the idea of an objective perspective, or the idea of an objective reality, is pragmatically true, because this is a social construct where you're trying to, as accurately as possible, make your social construct match the natural reality. It is an ideal and a goal, and it produces results, but it's not literally true. It's kind of analogous to belief in a God. In most situations, that belief, and historically, that belief offers more benefit than the alternative. Well, the best example of a pragmatic truth is something like, all guns are loaded. Obviously, this is not literally true. It is possible to have a gun with no ammunition in it. But a person who regularly interacts with guns, they will have, on average, a better existence than a person who does not live their life as if that's true. And if you know anybody who is into firearms, they are careful to a fault. If someone, anytime someone, hands a gun to you, you will check it to make sure it's unloaded. Not a thing you can ever take anybody's word for. And there are many pragmatic truths. And I think the reason postmodernism has, other than, just adapting and evolving to its environment, is you can't gather people around something that's completely false. There has to be a nugget of truth. And because it'll intimidate people, because on a deep unconscious level, they know there's something to what's being said, but their unconscious defense mechanisms will generally cause them to recoil from it. And that creates the opportunity to basically steamroll people. I've been getting through a book on, I guess you call it the evolution of postmodernism, mostly over the last couple decades, but, back to its sources. And you're going to find a lot of very screwed up, very bitter, very resentful people. It's like they were looking for the thing to justify how they already felt about the world. I know this sounds very dark, and I should say that we're only focusing on the bitter pill side of this truth about the nature of existence. There's always a flip side. Unfortunately, that's really, really difficult to get into. I think I'm far enough into this stream to say the word psychedelic without getting demonetized or limited. I have no interest and no need in consuming psychedelics. I don't need to. I understand what it is people are experiencing when they do that. What's happening, well, there's a few things happening, and I should get to the scientific side first. They break down your systems that construct your reality in several ways. A lot of your reality testing. For one example, cognitively, biologically, you, as far as distance, there's things you're in contact with physically. There's things you in your immediate vicinity that you could become in contact with very quickly. There's things that you couldn't become in contact with, but you could move a short distance and become in contact with. And then there are things that are basically so far away that you conceive of them as permanently out of reach. This would be, the moon, stars, stuff like that. But also mountains. You'd say that a mountain is something you could travel to, but that's why there's so much spiritual something attached to it. Why, traveling a distance and climbing a mountain is an element in a lot of stories related to meaning. Heck, the standard thumbnail that I use on my grinding meaning streams is like my character, when I don't have stuff in front of it, walking up this mesa in the Barrens. There is a little shrine up there. I believe it was in memory of one of the developers of World of Warcraft who died before it was released. A little backstory there. When you consume a psychedelic, the distance between you and other things breaks down. You can feel like you are in contact with all things around you, no matter how distant. It also breaks down identity distinction, the difference between you and someone else and a group of people, and people far away and people close. Those you get blurred or become non-existent. So when someone says, I feel everyone, we're all one, and I looked up at the stars and I could touch them, and they were me and I was them. This is there is biochemistry, causing some of that. But what psychedelics can do is it's reality testing, but it's also processing the implications of what you're experiencing is impaired or completely disabled. So people will say, I saw God, I did this, I could feel the oneness of all things. You've heard all of the phrases. It's like, I understood it. I understood what it was all about. Life, death, God. It all made sense. And then I came down. And the coming down, I would say, is your cognitive barriers reasserting themselves to protect your psyche as the implications of what you're experiencing start to become, unconsciously realized, and to protect your psyche from the, psyche shattering implications of the true nature of existence, your shields have to go back up, essentially. Oh, yeah, I'm just parked here in an asteroid field. I was going to mine, but I think I'll just use that as a backdrop. And again, the real issue with postmodernism is they have an element of truth worked in, and that there is no objective reality, which people think that the thing that objective reality maps to that doesn't exist. It still exists. And a better critique from less self-hating postmodernists would make that distinction, but that's not fit to purpose. It's essentially a universal solvent for breaking down social constructs, and it can be applied to anything, because anything that exists in the social realm is a social construct. Now, social constructs map to things in actual reality if the system is healthy and productive. Because a social construct that doesn't map to reality in any way is pure delusion and will offer no utility in the physical world. This is why having, I guess you could say, a superordinate ideal of having your scientific model match reality as closely as possible will produce results. The criticism that the scientific model is still a social construct, yes, that's technically true, but not all social constructs are created equal. Some are very closely mapped to natural reality, and some just exist in the minds of the people that promote it. And when it comes to me, I listen to a lot of books and I listen to a lot of interviews. And I suppose because of my autism, when people are talking about things that map to natural reality, as I call it, I can follow. Because as vast and complicated as it is, there are a limited number of ways that systems can manifest. And every system that you become familiar with, on I guess you'd say on a personal, tangible, tactile level, will inform you about other systems. Now, again, this is the autistic perspective where I have to have like an almost physical model of a thing to understand it. It takes me a long time to learn what other people will pick up fairly quickly. But once I've caught up, I typically leave most people behind as I'm working from this higher resolution model. And it is interesting listening to people talk about things because you can tell whether they're talking from a personal experience with a natural system type conversation from someone who has whatever they're talking about is pretty far removed from any sort of natural reality, and they're just servicing whatever social hierarchies they are a part of. And people will switch back and forth because, normal people, they exist in both and they really can't see a distinction between them. Not sure where I want to go from. I want to do something a little more positive. I should say that, well, postmodernism is going to run its course. It may take a while, but every system that starts moving away where it's the social constructs that make up that system become more and more divergent from natural reality, their ability to affect things in the world will become increasingly limited. It's showing a 0 bit rate on my audio. Let me make sure. It seems to be okay. I think it's just a bugged. Okay. Yeah, it seems to be fine. Just sometimes it gives you weird messages while you're streaming. Oh. I think that I am going to call it here. I probably should have been a little bit better prepared, but this is not an easy topic. You don't want to tell people, hey, objective reality, I don't want to say the postmodernists are right. I would say that I wish they were a lot more wrong than they are. And I also want to be careful because I don't want to inadvertently black pill people on the nature of existence, because it's amazing. Just the way I see things is sometimes so overwhelming. Like you're more effective in understanding things and acting in the world most of the time by being detached and not letting, your emotions dictate your behavior. But I found that I actually have to detach myself from the meaning of what I've realized about how things work. Because there was a time where it was kind of all coming together, and I guess you could say that I could trip anytime I wanted. But it can be overwhelming, and then it detaches you from the real world. And if you want to make any positive changes to the world, and this is a criticism that I have for a lot of, I don't know, people who lock themselves away in a monastery to contemplate existence, but don't go out and actually use what they've learned or try to share with other people what they understand. It's dubious, at least to me. It seems like you're just hiding from the world, and how does that benefit anybody? Of course, going on long, rambling streams saying things that won't make sense to a lot of people might not be much better, but you have to try. I mean, just say, the true nature of existence is amazing, and it's incredible, and there's no reason to be nihilistic, that there is more, but you have to earn that more by becoming mentally durable enough to survive naive notions of how things work, or having your naivete exposed. I had a long life of being incredibly oblivious and just not understanding, and the way I got better was just by confronting it and owning things that were really uncomfortable. And eventually that just became my mode of seeking out that which either basically induced social anxiety, and spending time there until it no longer held purchase over me. And let's say my anxiety, particularly social anxiety, was my wayfinder for self-improvement. You don't improve through comfort. You improve by feeling like a dumbass. If whatever you're engaging in is easy and comfortable, you're not growing. If you feel anxiety and insecurity and you feel kind of incompetent at it, you're probably in a learning mode. And the pain of owning your shortcomings is the path to greater enlightenment. I'm the Expert Layman. Thanks for watching.